float and volume. This is like the Bash twins, guys. They go together. They are brothers in this. When we have float, volume's going to be coming on in. When we have volume and a stock has a low float, these plays are going to go absolutely bonkers. So when I'm looking for shorts, remember team, I am looking to get paid quickly and I'm looking to get paid as fast as I can. Usually the quickest money is always going to be coming from stocks that are smaller plays, which again is going to have bigger percentages, which is going to be more appealing towards traders with smaller accounts. And usually again, traders with smaller accounts are always going to be the people that just pump up plays that usually end up, again, which I never want, usually end up losing all their money. We want to be looking for the highest plays with the most amount of volume and the lowest floats out there. These are going to spike up the hardest and then dump the hardest, just like we saw today. And I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. We'll go back into the examples of today. So what is the float? The float's simple enough. I'm just going to give you the easy definition. The float are the shares offered to the public. When you have a high float, you have a high supply. When you have a low float, you have a low supply. The lower the supply, obviously, the more in demand we could possibly get it. When something is very rare, right? There's only a small amount. Those prices could increase dramatically. And that's where the volume comes on in. So float. Float is the outstanding shares minus those that are restricted or held by insiders or major shareholders. Floating stock will change over time as new shares may be issued and shares may be bought up by insiders or against shareholders. And low float stocks tend to have higher spreads and more volatility. Boom, boom, boom. That's what we like. So the best way to be thinking about float right here is, remember, thinking about this as simply enough as supply, okay? So easiest example, I've given this example a bajillion times before, but what I always like to think about it is Christmas Eve. Everyone close their eyes right now and imagine that it is Christmas Eve and you are a parent and you have little Timmy. And little Timmy, you told him that you were bringing him home an Xbox. He's been a great boy this year and Santa is bringing him an Xbox. But guess what? You've been a little busy. You've been saying to yourself, oh man, I'm going to go get that Xbox one of these days before Christmas. And now it's Christmas Eve and you're saying, man, I got to go get little Timmy an Xbox. So you show up to Best Buy and you know what? You see a big pyramid of Xboxes. There's more than enough Xboxes for everyone. Hey, no issues, no problems, no issues whatsoever. Everyone can get an Xbox. It's fine. It's easy. So guess what? You walk on up and everyone's smiling. You might see your neighbor, right? You say, hey, how's it going, Carl? Having a good time, Carl? All right. Hey, Merry Christmas. See you later, right? It's easy. Everyone's happy. Everyone nice and calm. It's nice and delightful. Now let's imagine, let's change this story. Let's change this story where you again walked in and now there was only one Xbox left and you saw 7 other parents all staring at that Xbox and all 7 other parents are saying, I need to get that Xbox right now. Guess what it turns into? It turns into chaos, right? It turns into absolute chaos. You are running to that Xbox as quickly as you can. You're pushing Carl into, again, the water. Fuck you, Carl. Get out of here, right? You're getting caught up in the entire mess. It's just, getting absolutely chaotic in every single way. Every person is just grabbing, trying to get that Xbox. Now, imagine fighting for one Xbox. It changes the entire environment. And this is how supply and demand works. Now, again, an employee, right? An employee could literally grab that Xbox and say, guys, we're going to do this a different way. This Xbox goes for $300. Everyone raise your hand if you want to pay $300 for it. Keep your hand up if you would pay $500. Some hands go down. Keep your hand up if you would pay $1,000 for it. More hands go down. Who here would pay $4,000 for this Xbox? Only one guy is left. Frank. Frank is saying, hey, you know what? I'll pay that $4,000 for little Timmy. Guess what, guys? That Xbox, that guy just paid 15x for. He just paid 15 times the original price for it. Now, why? Because everyone wanted it and there was such low supply. So this is how supply and demand works, right? Simple economics. Now, when we again break this on down and we learn about volume, volume is going to be all the parents. The volume is going to be the people that are rushing into it. Now, we could have one Xbox. That doesn't mean it's in demand if no one wants it. If, again, there are a lot of people who want that Xbox, that's the volume now that's coming on in. So the volume is the number of shares or contracts traded in a security. Basically what it is, this is not the correct definition I'm about to tell you. Please understand that. But it's the easiest way to think about it. The easiest way I think about it is the more volume there is, the more people there are. The more volume there is, the more eyes there are. The more volume there is, the more orders that you will have. The correct definition of volume is how many shares are traded from hand to hand. So you might see 100 shares go through, 100 shares are sold. 2,000 shares are bought, 2,000 shares are sold. So it's the orders that go through, the orders that are changed from hand to hand, that's the volume. But in simple facts is the more volume is from more orders, more money, more people. So when a stock has a lot of people looking at it, that's where we're going to see a lot of hype. Now, let's take a look at this here, traders. If we take a look over on AWIN, okay? AWIN, we can already see this play has a very low float, 620,000. What did I already start with? I started by telling you that float comes down to this, and we're going to make an easy little diagram for you here. Float. If you want to get the crazy craziest float. So we're talking about absolutely wild, crazy, big spikes, big rips, big runs. It is going to be 5 million or less. So if you have less than 5 million float, you can see a very big spike, a very big run. All right. If you want to see a solid spiker, right, you could definitely see some action. You could definitely see some movement. You are going to be looking between the areas of 6 million all the way up towards around 20 million. So can you see a big spike on, 7 million float? Absolutely. Can you see a big spike with 12 million float? Absolutely. But it's definitely going to be, a little bit slower. And then usually what we have here is slow. The slowest plays, the most boring plays are going to be like, 20 million plus. So sometimes you'll see like 100 million in float. These are plays that are never going to spike very hard. The only exceptions would be like GameStop or meme plays. Okay. But 99% of the time, this is the easy way to think about it. So when I take a look over on my plays right here, AWIN, 620,000 in float. Take a look on what AWIN did. It went on a crazy rip and run. Take a look right here. Float, FLT, float, 299,000 in float over on EDBL. Take a look what EDBL did. EDBL went from $4 and spiked all the way up to $9. If you had a $4,000 account today and you again rode that up to $9, you could have turned $4,000 into a $5,000 profit. You would have again $9,000 in your account tomorrow. That's what's so crazy about the float. So the thing is, I always like looking for low floats, right? 5 million float, LIDR. Guys, LIDR is starting to spike right now. Guess what? It only has 5 million in float. So when you have hard spikes, in our case, we can get hard dumps and hard reversals and hard drops. Now let's take a look over on volume though. How can we again be able to tell if a stock has a lot of volume? Well, usually when you're a top gainer, you're always going to have volume. But the thing is, you always want to be looking or can be looking over on Yahoo Finance. So when I take a look over on these plays here, such as LIDR, you guys will be able to realize LIDR has how much volume? The average volume is 3 million shares. That's the average per day. Right now, it has 9 million. We already have 3 times its average volume, and it's only an hour into the day. 3 times the average volume on a stock that does not have many shares available to trade. Imagine this. Imagine if there was a restaurant and you only had, let's say, normal restaurant, it fits 30 people. And now, showed on up, 90 people show on up. So if 90 people show up on a restaurant that only fits 30 people, 60 people are waiting for a table. Imagine if you walked into a restaurant and you saw 60 people waiting for a table. The bus boys are trying to go as quickly as they can. The hosts are trying to talk to everyone and cooperate everyone. The chefs are cooking as quickly as they can. It gets a lot crazier. Guys, you want to even see even more nuts plays? Let's take a look over on AWIN. Let's see what the volume is compared to its average. We have a low float stock, a stock that does not have many shares available. And on an average day, we have 216,000 shares traded. Throughout the day, 216,000 shares are traded. But today, there's already 22 million shares. So this is like what? 100, like this is, so much more. Okay. I don't know, 80 times more its average volume. That is nuts. That is so wild. That is so crazy to see. We are so much farther up, 40 times more. So AWIN right here has 140% gain because it has a low float and massive volume. So you can see how it makes sense. But the same exact thing goes when we start crashing on down, when we start getting weaker, when we start dropping, when we start fading, when we start getting ugly here, right? The faster it goes on up is just as fast as it can come back on down. And that's the beauty of it. If we know we can make a lot of money on the upside, we can make just as much money on the downside. And we know the downside is going to be more predictable. We know the downside is where we can be able to make more money. We know the downside is where we can be able to make more cash. So that is something that is going to be so crucial and so great. Now we do have to keep going on and we have to talk about something. What about FFIE deck? FFIE has 41 million in float. Why is this one moving on up? 2 different reasons. Number 1, it's a meme stock. Didn't I tell you that meme stocks can spike hard, right? Because they basically have an entire army of people behind it. But also it has 41 million float. The stock, let's remember here, traders, this stock is only or was only 9 cents. It was only 9 cents. So if we think about it in this manner, if a stock is only 9 cents, how many shares can you get on that play? Well, Deck, if a stock is 9 cents, I could buy like 20,000 shares. I could buy 100,000 shares. Exactly. What did I tell you the float was? The float was the shares offered to the public. If a stock is only 9 cents, 10 cents, it's okay if the float's a little bit bigger. Because what would happen if someone bought 100,000 shares on a stock that's $6? That means they're putting in $660,000 on this play on a stock that again only has 620,000 shares available. The stock would go bananas. If someone bought right now almost $1 million on AWIN, it'd probably spike up to $10 plus. Now let's think about it though. If someone bought in 100,000 shares over on FFIE, 100,000 shares on FFIE is only $40,000. So you can see there's a massive difference. So please note right now, if you guys have a larger float, it can still spike if the stock is underneath like 50 cents. So you can buy more shares so the float can be a little bit larger and you can still be able to spike on up. Does that make sense? So please again, write that down just so you don't get get confused by it. Volume, you can see volume at the bottom of the charts. And as we know, we talked about volume equals activity. Activity equals profit. Low float plus high volume equals massive spikes. So when you have a stock that has a low float, you are going to get spikes like this. Notice monster volume, bottom of the chart. BPTH, what is the float on this play? 2 million in float, right? So BPTH, 2 million float, you could see a stock, spiked up $80. It can go on that big rip and run. Pop quiz, how much volume is the perfect amount? You guys already know this. You need to compare the average volume to the current volume on the day. There is no magic number. It's about just being double, triple, quadruple, what you would like to see. Now, the best way to know if a stock is worth getting involved in, I'm going to tell you guys right now, the best way to know if a stock is worth getting involved in is honestly just by looking at the level 2. I'm just going to blank out that level 2. I don't want you guys focusing on it. I want you guys to focus on this level 2 right here. Looking at the level 2 will tell you right away if you should get involved on this trade or not, okay? And how do I know that? Well, the thing is, team, I want to see people buying. I want to see people selling. I want to see this level 2 being active. So when I take a look over on AWIN, I can see that there are orders going through. I can see we're up 144%. I can see that this time in sales is moving. This time in sales is moving. We're having action. There's orders going through. As long as there's volume, there's activity, which equals we can profit. We cannot profit if a stock just moves sideways and does nothing, right? There's no money to be made there. So for instance, let's go ahead and I'm just looking for a dead play, SGRP. Let's say, Deck, what do you think about SGRP? Can I make a lot of money today on SGRP? And I type in SGRP. Let's watch to see how much movement there is. Still, no one has bought or sold SGRP. Not one person yet. Nope, no one, not one order yet. So let me ask you guys a question. Can you make money on SGRP? The answer is no. You cannot make money on a day trade on SGRP. Not one person is buying or selling SGRP. So I can see that on the level 2, that no one is buying or selling anything. If no movement is happening, there's no money to be made. So the thing is, instead, I can go over to AWIN and I say, Deck, can I trade AWIN? Hey, this seems like a much better time. Guys, I want to go where the party's at. I want to get, I want to have some fun. I want to party here. Traders, let me ask you guys, for all you party animals out there, if you were so hyped on up for, again, this party on Friday night is going to be the best party you guys have ever gone to. And all of a sudden you walk in and there's no music, there's no one there, there's no drinks, there's no food, there's no nothing. And you're just like, this party stinks. I'm the only one here. Same exact thing, guys, how I feel like when I go to a stock. If there's no one there on the stock, I don't want to be there. Guess what? Everyone's having fun. Everyone's dancing. Someone who runs off the street and says, oh, did you show up to this party? Everyone's over at the AWIN club. Everyone's at AWIN right now. Woo! Yeah, that party's popping on off. That's where you want to be. Guess what? You hop in the Uber, you head on over to Club AWIN, Club AWIN. I'm going to Club AWIN tonight. This is, again, a much more active, much more fun time. Okay? So that's, something very important that every single trader needs to understand. That's something very important that every single trader needs to know. So float, volume,